Do you actually have to be on cocaine to be on this podcast?
It's a great day to be a Wildcat!
Cocaine?
Durfing?
What's up, everybody? You're listening to yet another edition of Cocaine Willie. I am your commissioner, Bob Trollsby, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, the good chef, Andre Napier, and Fireball, Matt Marchesini. Tonight, we are coming off of a heartbreaking, gut-wrenching K-State Wildcat football loss to the Texas Longhorns in Austin, Texas. And this week we're in bounce back mode as the team faces the Baylor Bears, who are currently 3-6 overall in Big 12 play and are coming off of a gut-wrenching loss of their own at the hands of the Houston Cougars. We're going to talk about the Texas game first, and sneak preview for everybody who's listening to this or watching this. We don't have a Baylor guest tonight. We had a guy lined up. It was Mark Moore, great guy from Our Daily Bears. He joined us last year, did a great preview. We had an awesome conversation, and he fell ill today. And so he is not going to be joining us. That said, we're going to do things a little differently today. We're going to talk about the Texas game. We're going to have an airing of grievances. And then we're going to talk and do a little bit more of an in-depth preview of the Baylor game on our own and predictions. And with that, let's talk about this Texas game. I honestly wish that we had just gotten blown out more so than this overtime game, dude. Like,
no way.
Dude, I mean, it was so much more heartbreaking, so much more gut-wrenching. I would almost put this up there with that Baylor game in 2012. It was horrible.
I don't know if it's that heartbreaking, but it was heartbreaking, and I wouldn't even define it as heartbreaking. It's almost two games. It's two games basically. How I look at it. When that first half happened and we cut it to 10 points at halftime, I had already kind of checked out and said that we lost the game. So whatever happened in that second half was kind of just cake. And if we would have came out with a dub, I've already established that we took an L at the beginning. So everything that happened from there, it was just a new game for me. So that second half started, and I mean, we fell even more in the hole. It was pretty tough third quarter too, but I didn't feel it was just a great game. If mind you, I'm watching it with non-K-State people. So like the Buckeye game
with a Texas fan though.
No, I wasn't one.
I
was watching it with a bunch of Buckeye fans, and they're just like on the edge of their seat and like they're having a good time. They're like, this game is awesome. And when you put it in perspective, like just take your emotions out of it, it's a great game. It was an absolute great game.
It totally was. It
yeah,
totally was.
I wasn't heartbroken. I'd already accepted my fate, so everything was just hunky-dory, baby.
Scott said it best last week on Bosco's Boys when he said everybody other than K-State and Texas fans are going to have a great time watching this game, and K-State and Texas fans are going to hate every moment of it. And I could not vouch for that more.
I'm sad. I'm still sad. That game was very much like it was an Elite Eight game for me. I was that distraught at the end of that game. And I was also watching it with a bunch of people that don't care about K-State. It was at a brewery in Pennsylvania, and happy birthday, Eric. But for 2 hours of your birthday party, I was solely focused on K-State because somehow we had gotten it to 10 points at half. But it's a game that the execution, we cannot execute on the road in tough situations. We've proven that. This team has proven that. The extra point debacle, missing a 29-yard field goal I don't know. I felt that we had the momentum so much in this game, and we somehow did not come out and win. I just felt that. And it's crazy to think because you're down 17-0, and it looks like this team was not ready and not focused during that first quarter. Really, you could say first 25 minutes of the game, right? But this one hurts because I truly believe that this team had the chance to really make it happen. And whether it be, I'm not going to say, there's execution pieces from the players, but there were some coaching pieces in this game that you have to look at and wonder what was going on here. Like, what are we doing? So it sucks. I mean, you had a really great chance to win against a top 10 team on the road. Last time you're going to play this team in a long time. So it definitely hit me hard that we did not pull it out. It really did.
Were there execution pieces? Yes. Were there coaching flaws? Yes. All of the above. How come you're not abandoning the running game until you did? It clearly wasn't working against one of the best rush defenses in the country, and you just kept doing it, and it was like the definition of insanity or whatever. You keep trying to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result.
Okay, I'm going to push back on that a little bit. I mean,
please do, because it was absurd.
We knew going into that game, what was my key point going into that game was that you had to be balanced, that you couldn't let Texas make you one-dimensional. Texas, I mean, let's not get it twisted. We had 8 yards passing on our first 10 attempts. So let's not say that we should have just abandoned the run and just start chucking it, because at the beginning of the game, nothing was working. So there's no, we should have stopped running after the first 2 drives. That wasn't going to happen. It was never going to. We're down 10, mind you. That's all we're down. We're down a lot more in other games this season before we start abandoning run games. That's our identity. So my question is, take away hindsight. You're in that first half, and I want you to tell me with all honesty, with our wide receiver core, what we've shown throughout this season would make you want to chuck it 42 times against Texas. I understand that running's not working, but in what world would I tell you that we're going to throw it 42 more times and get no more running? We're not going to do it. You would say you're crazy.
All I know is if I were to go back to my security camera, which we've got 3 cameras in our house, one in our living room, one on our front porch, and one on our back porch. The one in our living room, it captures basically everything that happened in our living room, including all conversations. And there were multiple times in that first half and probably the first quarter where it's like, we can't keep doing this. Why do we keep rushing the ball? Why do we keep rushing the ball? It didn't look balanced at all. I don't care if there were 8 passing yards on 10 attempts. You need to figure out scheming, and you need to figure out the scheming against their defense and take a look at the looks that they're showing you to try to get something that could work, because whatever you did in the second half started to work. So they made that adjustment. They just made it way later.
I mean, okay, now this is where I hate this. I hate this argument that the Colin Klein is up in the booth up there. I mean, how much adjustments are you expecting to make without being face to face with the team with a whiteboard and all this stuff, trying to make adjustments? There's only so much you can do. What do you want this guy to do, to just completely scrap the game plan that they worked a week on?
Yeah.
To try to
No. Yeah.
How do you do that? How? I mean, in what world has that ever happened? It takes time. It takes halftime. We need to get adjusted there. We have a game plan. We basically got a script for the first basically 2 drives. That shit didn't work. Mind you, it didn't work. I'm all with you. It didn't work, but you can't just abandon your game plan because you're down 10 points. it's not working, but wait till we get to the halftime adjustments. It's not like we can just go on the sideline and say, hey, we're going to run nothing but the air raid offense from here on out. No, we've got a game plan. We're going to try to establish the run no matter what, because that's our identity. Going into the last 3 games, Avery runs for 5 touchdowns. TCU, we run for like 1,000,000 yards. Houston, we absolutely dominate them with our offensive line running at will. Why in the world would we just say, hey, because we've only rushed for 20 yards in this first half, we got to stop? Mind you, it's not working, but you can't make that adjustment midway through the first quarter. It's never going to happen like that. We have hindsight. We know that the air raid starts working in the second half, but that's what the coaches did that.
We did also know that they were a top 10 rush defense in the nation going into that game as well.
I get it, but we're also a top 5 rushing offense going into that game. So what are you saying? Like, oh, we just got to bend the knee to Texas? I mean, it turned out that way, but at the beginning of the game, you're not going to just bend the knee to Texas. Kleiman said that in his press conference. We've got to establish the run. It's a line of scrimmage game. They beat us on the line of scrimmage, but we had to wait till we got to halftime to make that adjustment. There's no way the coaches could have made that adjustment at the beginning of the first quarter. And if I told you that they were trying to do that, you would have slapped me. In all honesty, our wide receivers had proven nothing throughout the season. Ben Sinnott was our only receiving option. He's hobbled, mind you. And people are clamoring for Avery Johnson. Especially in this game, they're clamoring for Avery Johnson. Why in the world would we, in the midway through the first quarter, put it all on Will Howard and this receiving core and say that's a better option than what we do best is running the ball? And that's my only gripe. If you got anything else against that, I just don't know what else to say.
This has been fun. Wow. I don't know. I don't know whose side I'm on. I mean, I'm always going to go back to the execution piece of the puzzle. And Chef is right. I mean, you have at least 2 drives scripted up. This is how you're going to run this thing. And you need your players to execute.
Totally.
You need your line to do what they need to do to give your running backs opportunities to get out in space. And Texas was prepared in that first quarter. They were very much prepared for what we were going to bring, and we were not executing. And so it is easy to say, yeah, you can move to throwing the football, but we have not, as viewers of this football team, there has not been much that says, hey, let's air it out and hope our wide receivers give us some opportunities to make some plays. This was the first game where you leave that game and you're like, what? How is this happening now? It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't.
And so there's some encouragement there. You have 3 games to go now. And you can see, with 2 home games and then a game on the road in Kansas, you have a newfound sense of, okay, we can be comfortable throwing the football and getting ourselves in a shootout like that if we need to, because we'll look good in that game. I mean, there are people that will have given him his, the negative pieces. We've heard it even from the players, but Will Howard looked a leader. He was a leader for this team on Saturday.
That was one of his best games. Full
yes.
In my opinion. The interception was not his fault. The fumble was, again, a lack of execution, and he just couldn't corral it in. That wasn't on him. And there were a lot of people who were also saying that was a bad call. I think that was objectively a fumble. We can put the refs screwing us bullshit aside, in my opinion. But that was one of his best performances in a K-State uniform, in my opinion.
No doubt. And I've been saying this all season long. I mean, I've been up and down on whether I think that we should, with Avery and all that, like maybe we should let it ride with Avery a little bit more than we are and all this stuff. But I've never been against Will Howard. Even after the Oklahoma State game, I've been riding with Will Howard. I want to get to Matt's point real quick, just a second, about the execution. I've been called small time. I've been called a bullshit artist over the internet for my takes on that was a top 10 Texas team, probably the best Texas team in the past decade.
That's the best Texas team since Mac Brown.
Yeah, and they have legitimately the most dominant D tackle I've seen since, I don't know, Ndamukong Suh. That dude was a fucking beast. And I knew it going into the game. I knew it all week that Tavondre Sweat was going to be an absolute unit and a problem. And he showed out. So execution be damned. He was a better player than Hayden Gillum, Taylor Portier, sometimes Cooper Beebe. Their players beat our players. I don't know if there's a amount of execution that could overweigh a player that is an NFL talent just beating you. I don't know if that's what you're referring to when you say execution, because when it comes down to it, our running game had no chance because we couldn't block one of their guys. Just man on man, scheming him. It didn't matter because he was a better player than we have. In my opinion, that's how it is. There's execution like versus Oklahoma State. That's execution because we had no energy. We had no way of game planning for, just little things that we were failing on. That's execution, in my opinion. Execution versus Texas, unless Hayden Gillum turns into Jason Kelsey all of a sudden, there's no way that he was going to be able to stop that guy. And that's not an execution on Gillum. That's just he's a better player than Gillum, and we had no chance.
I would argue that if you're scheming against a player, you are putting together something to execute that scheme. But I understand. I mean, you look at who is the most dominant player on the field for their defense. It's obviously him. But you're game planning to try and make sure that he's not affecting the game as much as you want him to affect the game.
I will say, okay, to counter that, I mean, we're just going to go a little back and forth here, which I like. To counteract him would mean either doubling him, tripling him, or, running away from him, which is fine if the other players on Texas weren't Texas players that are also elite.
Because you still have Jalen Ford and all those other guys.
And Byron Murphy, and you have all these other players that are elite level fast, elite level athletes that are, I mean, mind you, they are the number 3 run defense in the country, and trying to run on them just by scheming away from a D tackle will put you in the situation that we were in. You couldn't block them. You couldn't block everybody else because I think we were trying to get away from that dude, and it just didn't matter because the other players were elite as well. When you're not able to, at the line of scrimmage, like Chris Kleiman said, if you can't win there, trying to go wide, which I thought was going to be the answer because I knew we weren't going to be able to block those guys, going wide just gave them numbers, and we had no shot. The rewatch of this game where I can pause it and have no emotion into it, it's absurd to even think that we could do anything without, absolutely wrecking their defensive line. So, Matt, you're right because the execution wasn't there because the game plan was not able to be executed, which was run the ball. So, yes, execution, but the players far outweigh our players.
If you're going to beat a top 10 team on the road, there's a reason that team's in the top 10. Okay. I mean, and we've done it before against elite talent, and it's worked. Now, it doesn't work every time, and we know that. But recent history has proven that we've been capable. It's been a capable thing to do that. So I mean, all in all, you are shocked that this game went into overtime based off of how the beginning of that game went. And that shows a lot of pride in what the players were doing everything that they needed to try and get back into that game. The turnovers on the defense, huge. I mean, that was a big factor in getting us in a position to even be close in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, you won the turnover battle 3-2.
And this is where
we thought on Friday was going, like, if we won the turnover battle, you win the game, right? But
this is where we get into the positives, because that was the first half. We got poo-pooed on. Execution, not there. Like to Bob's point, we made adjustments, got into the second half. I think defensively, special teams, offensively, it was a total 180. Everybody's game plan changed. They made the adjustments. Our coaches are elite at that. They are. I mean, if you want them to make adjustments in the first quarter, that's probably not going to happen. If you want to dock them for that, so be it. Doc Kleiman, Doc Klanderman, Doc Klein. I don't want to say KKK, but I will.
You're the only one on this podcast who can say that.
But listen, they made the adjustments and the positives started to ooze out of this team. It started to look like the team that we knew, with the players that we have put in the right positions versus superior athletes, and it started to show. Matt, you brought it up defensively. Jacob Parrish getting to the ball. I mean, we put the pressure on Byron Murphy. We started showing zone looks, and it really completely, put him at loss. We could talk about what those were, and if you listen to Kobe Savage, it kind of goes from we're trying to do exotic looks to trick him to just running our base defense, which actually tricked him, which is, I don't know if that's a sign for things to come, like what we did versus Houston and TCU, where we're just running base defense and not trying to trick ourselves into thinking we have to trick somebody. But we run our base defense and the athletes start showing up. Jake Clifton, we already said Parrish, but Will Lee had a good game. Garber had a good game. Those receivers in the second half started to get locked down a little bit. And it was a lot of positives on the defense. And Bob, I want you to talk about what you saw in the passing game, because I was lost. I was thrown in a blender when we started hitting Keegan Johnson and all those boys.
The Keegan Johnson redemption arc in this game was wild to me, because he had that moment where the interception was 100% on Keegan Johnson. None of it was on Will Howard. It was 100% on Keegan Johnson.
I don't know if it's on anybody.
It's got to be on somebody.
That would have been
that would have been Keegan Johnson or Will Howard. It has to be on somebody.
Will Howard threw a dot. He threw an absolute
dime.
He threw a dime in the bucket. Keegan Johnson is, mind you, it's similar to the Jaden Jackson throw that he threw earlier in the season, where the guy is draped all over Keegan. That is great defense. If that was a K-State defender, I'd have been like, hell yeah, that is great defense. Because he's not burnt. He's not burning him. It would have been a tough catch for Keegan to make that, because he's basically trying to catch it with one hand. And then he gets it on the rebound with two, and he's hitting the ground, and it pops up. I don't think that's on Keegan. I don't think that's on definitely not on Will Howard. These guys are running so fast. And to try to catch it with one hand, then get it off the carom in two hands, that's just a tough catch. That's a football play, in my opinion, that's on nobody. It's a good play by the safety coming over and, catching it off the rebound, I guess. But I don't put that on Keegan either, in my opinion.
Fair point, but you have one job.
I don't like that.
Your job is to catch passes, and it hit you in the hands.
I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
Job. So but it pissed me off that everybody was putting it on Will.
Yeah, absolutely.
More so than Keegan. Keegan has more of the blame to share there than Will Howard ever could have, because Will threw a perfect pass. You could not have asked for a more perfect pass in that situation from Will Howard. But just his redemption arc to that original point. He went from that horrible situation on that play where it ended up turning into an interception to doing what he did on the day, which he ended up with seven catches for 70 yards, which, I mean, that's great. That's great for him. And I mean, what was his highest total for receiving yards prior to that?
Maybe 20 something
20
versus
something?
it was a home game. Was it Troy? It was just that because he missed the SEMO game
Troy
and
was
then
his
he came.
first game.
Yeah, I think it was that game. He came back. He caught, he didn't play the first half, played the second half. He caught that deep curl route, almost got in the end zone in his first game. That was
His highest receiving yard total was 31 against Oklahoma State. He went 0 for against Tech, 0 for
Oklahoma
against
State.
TCU.
That's what I was going to say. And because I know ball.
Oh yeah, you do. You definitely don't. You definitely know ball. I don't remember that 31 yards receiving.
They did have 25 against Troy as well.
Was the Oklahoma State game where he almost got in the end zone, like on a jet sweep, or what game was that recently? I feel like that was recent. Like he kind of got robbed because he stepped out of bounds.
Was it, I swear it was like a night game, like a TCU. I swear
That might have been TCU. You might be right. But Keegan Johnson's
a few games ago, we were playing the game of over-under. Is he going to even have 200 yards this season? Which he's at 143 now. He's got 3 games to go.
I think he might get it. I mean, do you think this is sustainable for him?
If it is, then he's well over in this next game, which would be great. But if we can see more of that from Keegan Johnson, we're going to have so much more of a balanced offensive attack, I think, because Will Howard has more of a reliable receiving option outside of just Ben Sinnott, who you've already said is hobbled, and Jace Brown, who seems to be one of the best wide receivers on the team right now as a true freshman, who had a tougher game the last game, but against Texas, he did have some good catches and did some good stuff there. I think it was the leading receiver, if I'm not mistaken.
I think Phillip Brooks has something to say to that.
Does he? No, because Jace Brown was the leading receiver with 77 yards.
Phillip Brooks wasn't the leading receiver?
76 yards. He beat him.
Oh, fucking. But this was Phillip Brooks' arguably best game at receiver.
Is very good. 2 touchdowns.
He's been here for 30 years. Can you remember every game that he's played?
I mean, I can remember the really good receiving games that he had. I know he had that one deep bomb. Well, not deep bomb, but the deep run and catch versus Iowa State, which won us the game because that was our only offensive touchdown, our only touchdown in the game. Iowa State last year,
119 yards.
And he's had a couple of good games this year he was the leading receiver a couple times. And he had a Texas Tech game maybe a couple years ago, maybe his first breakout game with Skyler. He had a touchdown at Tech. It was really good. And then you have the special teams games where, versus KU has 2 punt returns. Nobody talks about that. Like, I get it that he's struggling, but like they say he's not explosive. What else is he?
Great question. Where has that been this year?
I thought he's been our most consistent receiver. I don't understand.
No, I'm saying like
he's been our most consistent receiver. That says a lot about where his score has been this year.
I'm saying for the punt returns and all of this stuff, like that's my biggest theme of this.
I think special teams climbing as much as credit as we want to give him for like keeping it going after Bill left. He talks a lot of game about special teams, but I think the game has changed so much in terms of special teams that he wants to use reserves on special teams. He wants to use underclassmen on special teams. He doesn't want necessarily his starters because Bill would put our first team defense out on fucking punt coverage and basically our whole starting offense on kick return and stuff. So
Jonathan Truman was still doing like kick return duty when he was a starting linebacker.
right. So I mean, I don't think he puts. Not that he doesn't put as much emphasis on it, but I don't think it's nearly the thing that he's worried about. And Phillip Brooks is, for all the things that we give him shit for, he's, knock on wood, he's consistent at catching the ball. Mind you, he muffed one in the Big 12 championship game last year, which was a huge part of the game. So as long as he's catching the ball, I'm fine with him on special teams. But Bob, you said that says a lot about this receiving core. I would love to see the numbers from last year's receiving core compared to this year's receiving core. And I would bet that Phillip Brooks is putting up numbers that are comparable to more than what Kurt Warner's boy did.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't have that off the top of my
head. I'm just saying that Phillip Brooks he's very underrated. People give him a lot of shit for not being explosive, for being a possession guy. He's having one of the better seasons as a receiver that we would beg Malik Knowles to have a season that Phillip Brooks is having right now. Outside of his senior year,
that's a hot take.
I mean, listen, outside of Malik Knowles' senior year, what did we get from him? And he was supposed to be our number one receiver for like 3 straight years.
I'm dying right now. I can't believe you're saying this stuff.
It's the truth. I mean, I just don't know what I have to defend Phillip Brooks because he's my boy. I like Phillip. And my wife thinks he's handsome.
But he's not having a better season than Malik Knowles had last year.
No, I said he's comparable to Kurt Warner's boy. That's what I said. And I said outside of his senior year, Malik Knowles, put his numbers up compared to Phillip Brooks, and I want to see what you're saying.
I just love how you call it Kurt Warner's boy.
Outside of his senior year, yeah, sure. Okay, whatever. You've got it right there statistically. Whatever. If you add that caveat.
I mean, Malik Knowles had last year. Malik Knowles had one of the better receiving years since Tyler Lockett. So
yeah, and I don't think Phillip Brooks is putting up 725 yards this year.
Well, okay, where's he at right now? I bet he's close to 500.
He's 5.
Don't get smart with me, Matt.
He's 513. We're on a tangent right now. The last we have to talk about the.
Get in there, Matt.
Go ahead.
That's what I was gonna say. I want to talk about.
We have to talk about the overtime.
Yes.
I am in the minority of this group. I thought that you take the points, or at least try to, because listen, K-State's defense on the field at that point in time in the game was the most elite unit across Texas's offense or defense and K-State's offense or defense. At that point in the game, you give your defense another opportunity to make a stop and force Malik Murphy to make a play when he had proven over the last few drives he was not going to do that.
No, okay. I'm going to say this. I respect everybody's opinion. Everybody listening, watching, you can see how honest I look right now and saying I respect everybody's opinion. We had the ball at the 7-yard line. First, 5-6 yard line. First, we got 4 plays to get it inside the 6-yard line on the road against a top 10 team in which you had already stopped. Yes, I get. We had stopped the offense. 3 points. We missed a 29-yard field goal already.
We did. Totally fair.
I love the risk taking that this coaching staff takes, because they believe in their players to get things done at the end of these games, especially the offense. The offense had been moving really well. I mean, the first play in that overtime, I mean, we start at what, the 25 in overtime, 35, 25,
35.
35. That first play went what, 20 yards. Like, you're already rolling on offense at that point. And so
25, sorry. 25, you were right.
25. Okay. The way that offense was moving the ball so quickly in overtime, you just have the feeling that they're going to get into the end zone because of that. And so the first down, if Will jukes to the right, he scores a touchdown. Like, just missed the read there. Like, the pop pass, you have 4 play. I truly believe that we got down to the 7 and the coaching staff was like, we have 4 plays to get into the end zone. There's not even a thought in their mind. And that's what Coach Kleiman said. So, like, I understand. I get it. Yes, you could kick the field goal and tie it up, but you're extending this game. Like, I truly believe you're not trying to tie the game. Like, you're not in Austin against this team trying to tie the game. You're trying to win it. And so
Yeah, no, you're right. And I 100% agree with Fireball Matt here. Ball knower. I mean, good looking man. He knows what he's doing. And I would do the same thing. You have to go for the jugular. You have to go out for the win. Now, I'm not going to put it on that I'm scared that Chris Tennant is going to miss a field goal. That's not the reason I would do it. I would do it for the reason that you said at the end. We're on the road. We're trying to win the game. This is an elimination game of sorts. You want to go out there and win it. You don't want to be like, oh, I think Texas is going to do this, that. You're not worried about Texas. You just threw the ball for 19 yards. You're at the 6-yard line. For as bad as we ran the ball, Trayshawn Ward's last 3 runs were 3 yards, 4 yards, 2 yards. Will Howard's runs in this game, and I'm not a hater on play calling at all. It's easy to call plays after they've been ran. It's easy to say, oh, that was stupid. That was a dumb play. I don't even know what these plays would be called. I don't even know how to call plays. But running your running backs is probably the safer bet to do down there at the 6-yard line. If he gets stuffed, I can almost guarantee you that is more of what would happen if Will Howard does it than what would happen if DJ Giddens gets the ball at the 6-yard line. I think he can fall forward for a couple yards. And if we're going to put it in Will Howard's hands, let's not have him run it. Let's run some route concepts for him. Let's not get cute with a pop pass. We haven't done that all year. Maybe once in the Missouri game. I feel like we did that in the Missouri game, and it worked. But I feel like we were cooking with route concept, short routes, all those stuff. Will Howard was laser-eyed, Peyton Manning-esque, dots, and I wanted to see him with the ball in his hand that way, or give it to DJ. It would have been so poetic, and I hate doing this, but it would have been so poetic for us to get absolutely shut down in the run game and get to the 6-yard line and run it 3 times. How crazy would that have been? That would have been absolutely storybook ending. We could have wrote so many freaking stories about that one, and it would. It's regrets because this is what eats me up. Not the game. We lost. Whatever. I'd go for it every time. The coaches had a thought. They think that these plays are going to work because most of the time in their head, they do work. And a lot of time we've executed them well. But I would have loved to seen it done another way if I was the one doing it. And that's why I'm behind a laptop talking to you guys at 9:15 in the evening.
So my thing is, this is the last thing I'll say on it. You had held Texas to only field goals fumbles, punts since the 9-minute mark of the third quarter. Your
Agreed.
defense was the best unit on the field at that point in the game. And I think you give them one last opportunity. And if Texas beats you there, whatever.
But
I understand what you're saying. And my whole life I've heard you play for the win on the road, you play for the tie at home when you're in these situations. But I just think when your defense was playing at the elite level that our defense was at that point in the game, you give them one last opportunity to make a stop and you force Texas to beat you in that situation, assuming Chris Tennant does make the field goal, which was a question mark at that point. Granted, he had made one after he missed one. So
he's rock solid.
Maybe he bounces back. He's in the right headspace at that point. I don't know. But that's my only thing is I feel like you give the defense another opportunity. You got to see what the Texas defense was throwing at you in that, goal to go situation. And then in second overtime, you scheme something up, and Colin Klein, this brilliant offensive mind that we have, you give him an opportunity to then beat Texas.
Okay, so you said the most important things right there, and I think that was the smartest thing you've ever said. And it actually kind of, skews me a little bit towards your opinion, because that is actually a really, really, really smart take. Because what I was going to say is you kick the field goal, you go for the tie, but if you're at the 6-yard line and you can't get it in on 3 downs and you kick the field goal and you tie, what confidence do you have in the second overtime? But I do like what you just said, where you see what they do when they get down there, and now you have a scheme for the next time you get it. That is actually a really smart take. I never really thought about it that way, because I thought if you got it down there in the 6, who cares about the second overtime? If you couldn't score there, what makes you think you're going to score again?
You're essentially getting 7 opportunities instead of 4. Because you get the 3 downs that you had in the first overtime plus 4 more in the second overtime, as opposed to the 4 that you have in the first overtime, and then you're just calling it quits.
Okay, that's actually a really, really smart take. And Matt, I'm about 50-50 on this thing. I don't know if you got anything to say to skew me back to your side, but I'll let you say that, and then I got a question about overtime, because I don't know how many overtime games you guys watched, especially to go the double OT in college football this year. But it looks like it goes team that receives that wins the coin toss. If they defer, they go on defense. Then the other team goes on offense. But then it looks like it goes.
Doesn't it go to just 2-point conversions?
No, not that. Not that. I'm talking about the rotation, because it looks like it used to go defense to offense, and then you go defense to offense again. But it
flips. It flips.
Yeah.
So we would go back out.
That's what I thought. But it's looking like this season that it was defense to offense, and then you go back on defense to offense again. That's what I've seen. I've seen that a couple times this year. I don't know if that's a rule change or if I'm actually misremembering, but I feel like I've seen that twice this year on double overtime games. So I don't know if that would change your mind on things. Because if it is the other way, where you go defense to offense and then the offense comes back out there, I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know if that would affect how you would do it if you kick the field goal or not.
I don't know. I just am. No. I am 100% that I agreed with the call. I felt it was the right call at the right time, despite the loss. There's no guarantees. Number one, you get to a second overtime, there's no guarantees. Number one, you're going to get any points on the board. And even if you get 7 points on the board, Texas could go right down the field, score, go for 2. And then I mean, I appreciate the staff so much, and they put trust in these guys to make a play. It didn't happen. We can cry about it, and we'll just go on to old Baylor.
Oh my God.
Baylor.
Did you really do that? Did you really call it that?
Baylor.
Yeah,
Baylor.
I'm good with finishing up Texas talk here.
Missed it.
And we are going to go ahead and wrap up on our Texas conversation. We're going to do the Baylor preview and prediction on the next episode. So reprogramming the programming note from the beginning of the episode. But with that, we're going to sign off. For all of us here at Cocaine Willie, thank you for listening to the show on your podcast feed or watching us on YouTube. Do us a favor if you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, leave us a 5-star rating and follow the show. And if you're watching on YouTube, give us a like on the video and subscribe to the channel, even if you are not a K-State fan. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram or follow us individually. I'm at Bob Trollsby. Fireball Matt is at Matt Marchesini. And Chef is at Chef Andre Napier. Chef.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug, baby.
We are all coke and no joke. Wildcat country.
Let's ride.
Right.